We didn't anticipate how straining mentally and physically this would become. Hey guys, I hope you've been keeping positive and motivated. If this is your first time here, I am Thor and I share my experiences as part of my Life After Failure series to entertain, encourage and inspire you and people all around the world. So we signed the agreement that we were working so hard towards. To celebrate, just before our departure back to Germany, we organized a meal for everyone who contributed towards the success of this agreement. We were very proud of what we've achieved in just 5 weeks between the two tours to Bolivia. But we were about to hit some new obstacles. We didn't anticipate how straining mentally and physically this would become. As we traveled back at the end of August, my wife turned 30 on the day that we land back in Frankfurt. A rather unglamorous 30th birthday if I'm honest, but I organized a little celebration for her with the help of some friends. Time was not our friend, as there were too many things to organize. Who would look after our dog for one? The person who looked after Mia before didn't have availability for her, and no one else was willing to look after 120 pounds and Bernard. So we had to take her, which in itself was a huge challenge in getting the health checks and then organizing the transport to Bolivia. There was no direct flights to Bolivia, so it was a logistical nightmare. The design work of the engine components were complete, so we had to source a company who would support us in the production of the high precision engine components such as the sinus disc, ideally before we returned to Bolivia. By the 15th of December we needed to be back and get started. If we wanted Evo to present our technology at the UNFCCC conference that starts on the 29th of November, just a few months away, we had to achieve the impossible. You see, we managed to sign an agreement with the Army and EMI, but we were nowhere close to having an audience with the President Evo Morales. And the engine we had designed was not tested, so all our calculations and theories were just CAD-based, as well as the experience from our previous engine. If we could not assemble the engine parts and get it started up, we were screwed. It was a risky move. Working with my father became one of the most challenging of all. Up to now he was observing from afar, but now he was coming to Bolivia with us. If anyone will have ever worked with their family, it is tough. But try working directly with my father, who had previously built a software empire employing 1,000+ people, who was choleric and on top of it, due to suffering a stroke 7 years earlier, lost the ability to read and write, which frustrated the heck out of him. Definitely something I am not proud of is that by the time we come to the end of this video series, my father and I were practically not talking. The conflict that we were going through made it even more difficult in achieving our goals. But actually it was our goals that created part of the problem in the first place. I was very proud of what we had achieved in the short time that we had in Bolivia. And you remember I said I needed to get emotionally involved. Well, I was totally invested in the cause for the country. But my father didn't have the opportunity to build this emotional connection. His focus was different to mine. Something that caused a huge conflict was when my father hired Castro, who I met on our first tour in Cochabamba. He was to produce all the parts and assemble the engine as a backup to the agreement we had in place. At the time my thought was that we were kind of betraying our collaboration agreement, not to mention that it also meant an additional expense. Plus, when it came to doing business, my father did not consider that things were handled differently in Bolivia than in Germany. I didn't have any confidence in Castro. He was a talker and I didn't believe in him being able to produce something that no one has ever built before. My father flies to meet with Castro in Cochabamba. I arrive one day later for my father and I to discuss next steps with Castro. My wife arrives a few days later with the sinus discs having been delivered that she now carried in a suitcase. We meet up with Colonel Castellanos, who had put together a selection of people to work with us according to our job description. We selected 4 people to join the team, but only 2 people were consistent enough for us to keep them on after just the second day. We arrive at the base in El Alto and we find our workshop almost completed as they said would be. The front gate they took out from an opposite building and bricked it closed, which we found quite amusing. The commanding officer of the base was very nice and welcoming. He was very interested in what we were doing and he tried his best to speak English with my father. There were some machine operators for the lathe and so on at the base, and officially they were not part of our team, but they were very keen to help us with whatever we needed. They instantly understood that if we were successful hopeful this could transform Bolivia, and we enjoyed the enthusiasm. Something that we did actually need and didn't anticipate was welding and soldering skills. And they had someone on base. He was chewing coca leaves all day. I tried it on the first tour, and if I'm honest, I prefer to stick to the coca tea. Chewing it numbs your mouth and supposedly keeps you awake. As we were settling in, as the workshop build came to completion, we get this email from Castro asking for more money. My father asked me what he wanted more money for, and it turned out that a lot of the fears I had towards the Castro situation became reality. My father sends me to Cochabamba to negotiate and resolve the issue together with an independent witness. The person who volunteered was someone doing some of the voiceover work for our video animations. After hours and hours of negotiations, plenty of aggression from Castro and lots of frustration by me, we finally leave the workshop with the components that he apparently manufactured to the specified drawings. But when I returned to El Alto the next day, we measure out everything he had produced, but there was not one part that was accurately manufactured to the correct dimensions. This experience, amongst a couple more, made me overprotective of what my vision was, causing further conflict with my father. It was stupid. I will always be grateful for the awesome service provided by TNT, who supported us along the way as we ordered our cylinders and pistons from our Chinese supplier, and we were able to arrange for TNT to collect additional components we ordered from our suppliers in Germany. It was customs that was the issue. I spent endless hours at the airport customs office having to fill declaration forms and pleading with custom officers to release our packages the quickest way possible. In Europe, we take this for granted, and it is a straightforward process. It was the luck of the draw. Sometimes we had a good and efficient custom officer who came to know that we were building this engine for Evo, and he was very supportive. But then there were others who seemed very keen in making our life as difficult as possible. On top of things, the reliability of the engine firing was horrendous. We had to use a reference motor with a propeller on it to calibrate the carburetors. After all, we were working at 12,000 feet altitude. Putting our disagreements aside, my father and I are very eager to solving the engine firing issues. Carolina, Colonel Barrero and Fernando are pushing to get an audience with General Cueto, who was the highest ranking general of the army. He was the one who could make it happen. General Cueto meets with Evo Morales together with the cabinet and other generals every Monday to discuss the week's agenda. Word of what we wanted to achieve in Bolivia made the rounds very quickly, and while we had some very high-level supporters such as General Agreda, there were many others who did not see our mission as favorable. People would question our motives, accusing us of wanting to steal the 60% of the world's lithium resources that lie in Bolivia. It got to the point that we were advised to be careful what we speak over the phone as they were tapped. When I would speak to my wife, you would hear a faint clicking noise just after either of us picked up the phone, which apparently was the indicator that someone was listening in. After several very frustrating weeks with technical challenges, Castro, and somehow finding middle ground with my father, General Agreda managed to arrange for General Cueto to come and listen to our presentation after the opening ceremony of another building in El Alto. General Cueto coming to visit us at the base was not only important to us, it would be the first time ever that he visits this particular base, which was a great honor for everyone at the base. For a whole week, the band was practicing a musical piece for when General Cueto would arrive. The meeting was set for the 16th of October, therefore having had less than 4 weeks to get the engine to work since our arrival. However, it was still not stable, and I feared the worst would happen. We would be kicked out. There was only one chance to impress General Cueto. We order drinks and salteñas, and we wait and wait for the arrival of the general and his entourage. The meeting was set for 10 AM, but by the time we start our presentation, it's probably 1:30. I was going to present the PowerPoint presentation, and my father was going to do the technical part presenting the engine. What everyone was expecting to see was the fully operational engine, but that wasn't going to be the case. Looking back, it was foolish of me to think that we could pull this off within 4 weeks. We might have spent a lot of time designing the engine, but nothing compared to testing it in the real world, especially in the environment we were working in. Some would say we were faced with just too many challenges at the same time. We get to greet General Cueto, and just as I'm about to start the presentation, a hailstorm drops down onto the metal roofing. There was no going back. I didn't know how long this hail was going to last for, so I'm speaking from the top of my lungs in the hope that General Cueto could hear me. My father always had a very captivating and convincing persona, and despite the engine not having been assembled, everyone was very impressed with the entire presentation we delivered. My father and I knew that we were very fortunate in how this went. For my father, it would not have been as drastic if they sent us home, but it would have destroyed me. However, we gained another supporter in General Cueto who confirmed that our proposal to Evo Morales would be put forth in the agenda for Monday morning's meeting. Now that we barely survived this, the mission was to figure out what the heck was causing the issues with the engine and to better get it working as soon as possible. As we continue on with this in the next episode of the series, we will dive into the story filled with jealousy, deception and a whole lot more in an attempt to stop us from getting any more supporters as we continue to push for an audience with Evo Morales to present our vision for Bolivia's future. Reflecting back onto this chapter in Bolivia, I realized that nowadays we oftentimes make excuses as to why we don't do something. We travel to Bolivia with an idea, a vision for the future for Bolivia, ourselves and the rest of the world. And this idea, this vision in combination with our passion and fire in our bellies opened so many doors for us. I don't know about you, but I want to be bold and fearless like this again, giving no room for excuses. Equally, we have to appreciate our achievements, and even if this would have been the end of the story, which thankfully it's not, looking back now I would still be extremely proud of what we have achieved. But the story continues and I hope you are as excited for it as I am, and I really hope to see you there. But in the meantime, stay positive and stay motivated.